Hello, this is Chek. Welcome back to my video blog. Today I thought I'd share a very powerful, simple exercise that comes from my video correspondence course or DVD correspondence course, Scientific Core Conditioning, a program that is loaded with core assessments, core exercise progressions, correlations between all sorts of different things that are useful to understand in your practice, both for taking care of yourself and as a strength and conditioning or rehab professional. The forward ball roll exercise is one that I use to help reestablish what is called inner unit conditioning. Inner unit means the muscles that have a capacity for long-term stabilization, more slow twitch muscle fiber, and therefore can hold us in postures and in work situations for long periods of time. And the inner unit muscles work to stabilize the joints and stiffen the pelvic girdle, rib cage, and allow the arms and legs a dynamic but stable working foundation. In my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, I go through all the correlations between diet and lifestyle and how the inner unit muscles can get shut down due to inflammation in the digestive or eliminative organs, which is a very common reason people do tons of abdominal exercise and still have problems with chronic back pain, can't get abdominal definition, can't get abs to flatten, etc. So it's wise to be aware of the diet correlations, as I show in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, in Scientific Core Conditioning and How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and my Golf Biomechanics Manual. I show you tests that you can do on yourself to determine if something's shutting your core muscles off, because if you have something like pain or a disc bulge or a bone spur or degenerative changes or joint inflammation or joint instability causing pain that's reflexively shutting the muscles off, oftentimes the exercises won't be effective, and worse, the more you try to do the exercises, the more you get what are called substitution patterns, where the brain has to try to recruit muscles to accomplish the objective your mind wants to accomplish, but they're not the right muscles for the job, and they're not usually recruited in the right sequence. And if the nervous system learns to do this, then it sets you up for chronic musculoskeletal problems. The forward ball roll is a very, very simple but effective exercise to train the nervous system to recruit the inner unit first before the bigger muscles, which is a reinforcement tool. And it's designed to put the deep abdominal muscles, transverse abdominis, internal deep fibers of the internal oblique, and the diaphragm and the pelvic floor are also involved in this strategy, so that you can hold the structure in alignment under just enough load that you can go for about 2 minutes. That will train the slow twitch muscle fibers to get stronger, and you can gradiate the exercise, as I will show you, so that as you fatigue, you can extend the set, where normally in a set, if you get to a point of fatigue where you can't hold good form, you got to stop, or you should stop. This method I developed allows you to continue the set by reducing the intensity. So the key feature is, to begin, we want to draw the umbilicus inward. It doesn't have to be done hard. It's just to trigger the nervous system to draw in, which fires the transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis, through reflex connection to the other muscles, such as the pelvic floor, the diaphragm, and the internal oblique muscles, all work together. So one turns the other on. You can learn that. For example, if you put your finger in your belly button, if you're a man, just try lifting your testicles, and you'll see as soon as you lift your testicles, it pulls the belly button inward. If you're tightening your rectum, like you're trying to stop yourself from pooping, you'll see it'll fire the transverse abdominis as well. I could keep going, but that makes the point. They're on reflex connections. In fact, if you put your finger in your belly button and try to lift your testicles, or for a woman do a Kegel, a drawing up and in vaginally, or tighten your rectum, and you don't feel that pulling in, that means that you have a more serious problem, that those neurological connections are not working properly and they need to be restored, which can come from traumatic experiences, deep inflammatory pathology, and a number of other things. But those people are very, very dangerous in a gym or even in the workplace because they cannot activate the stabilizers while they're using big muscles, and that leads to wear and tear on joints, disc bulges, degenerative joint changes, spinal instabilities, and a long number of problems. So to do this very simple exercise, ideally, if you have a problem like I'm talking about, you should be coached by someone like a skilled Chek Chek practitioner or Chek exercise coach all the way up through 1, 2, 3, and 4, because they have the knowledge to administer these exercises therapeutically and clear who should or shouldn't do the exercises, what precautions need to be made, and they can give you a proper assessment. But typically we need to use a dowel rod to get the form perfect, which requires that somebody help you by positioning the dowel rod and holding it. I'm going to try to do it by myself here. So to start with, the key thing you want to remember is that you want your shoulder at about a 90-degree angle to the trunk, so the midline of the trunk to the shoulder, and you want the hip at about a 90-degree angle from the midline. So if you can imagine, you should be able to slide a box right in there. If my elbows are too far back, the box won't fit. If you're too far forward, then you lose that right angle relationship. That gives you a common starting point every time, so you know that as you get stronger, you're rolling further out on the ball, and you can be consistent with your assessments. For example, you can measure from the middle of your knee to where you can take the ball before you start losing position, and as you get stronger, you can see that measurement getting bigger. But if you start in different places, you have no way to measure your performance increases. We want to begin by taking a breath and then just activating the abdominal muscles just enough that we can feel them. And then we're going to roll the ball forward. We want to make sure that for every degree we open the hip, we also open the arm so that we have even opening of the lever arms, putting stress equally through the spine. We want to go to the point at which we feel we can hold good alignment for a good 30 seconds before we start to break down, and it's hard because we need at least a good 30-second head run on activating the deep abdominal wall and putting it under some load. As we fatigue, and right now I've already been doing sets of this, so I'm already starting to fatigue, your body will start to shake. As long as you can keep your head and spine in good neutral alignment, that's okay. But if you start noticing, for example, that your pelvis is tipping forward and you're feeling pressure in your spine, that would mean you were losing good form. So if you start to feel that, you just roll back till you feel that you've got the ability to stabilize effectively, and then when that starts to fatigue, you just roll back a little more and take as much load as you can. I use a stopwatch. As soon as I roll out, I click the start, and I want to continue that for 2 minutes to get enough working load to get a favorable conditioning effect to help increase the strength and endurance of the stabilizer muscles of the core. Now, if I was to put this stick on my body to get the right alignment, I want to make sure that the stick touches my sacrum, my middle back, and my head. And to get the right amount of curve, I have to reach back behind myself with my fingers, and you want to slide your fingers, you tip your pelvis forward and put your hand behind your belly button and slide your hand under there and adjust your curve so that the space between your spine and the stick is just filled by the thickness of your hand. And that's an approximation for each individual's neutral lumbar curve, but naturally it has to be your hand going back there because the thickness of your hand correlates to the curve of your body. It's just an approximation, but it's better than guessing or not doing anything. So now as I roll out, I want to make sure I try to keep that curvature. This is why you need a helper. And then I'm rolling out and I'm monitoring those 3 points of contact. Now if I go further than my body can handle, the curve starts getting too big and you start seeing more space. Or if someone does a lot of sit-ups and crunches and they've trained their nervous system to overuse the rectus abdominis and the external obliques, then they may have another reaction as they go under more and more load rolling forward. Their tail tucks under because the rectus abdominis and the external obliques take over. And that's very classic of a reaction from doing too much sit-ups and crunches and flexion type movements when you don't have adequate internal strength to stabilize it, or you've trained your body in pain and it's learned to use what's called the outer unit, or the big outer muscles, in place of the inner unit muscles. So holding that good position that I showed you earlier, again, you're just going to stay there, and when your form starts to break or you feel like you're starting to shake and you can't hold the position, you roll back equally from the hip and the shoulder. You can watch your stopwatch to make sure you know how much time you have left. So that's the basic method. This exercise is very, very safe to do for pretty much anyone. I've rehabbed countless spinal pathologies of every type, including many medical failures. I've had multiple surgeries. And if they can do the exercise without pain, which is usually, when there is pain, it's usually because people are trying to do it with too much intensity, then it's a safe thing to do. The spine's neutral, so there's not a lot of compressive loading on the spine. Your next advance on the exercise is to pretend you're holding a giant crayon in your hand, and when you roll out into position, this is called forward ball roll with alphabet, pretend you're drawing letters of the alphabet. The bigger the letter, the more stress it puts through the core and the harder it is. So you want to watch to make sure your spine's not jumping all over the place, or you're just making it hard but making it stupid at the same time. So if the person can't handle letters a foot tall, then you can go down to tiny little letters. Even just moving the arms like this fires the core in a myriad of different patterns, which enhances the richness of the motor learning. Instead of it just being a linear exercise, now it becomes a multi-dimensional exercise, which enhances the nervous system's capacity to recruit the muscles in different patterns, and it makes it a more dense form of neuromuscular conditioning. So you can work your way through the alphabet, and I simply use that as a signifier to make people move their arms in all sorts of different directions. If you don't have a stopwatch, then typically what you can do is say, I'm going to work my way all the way through the alphabet and try not to rush it. And that usually gives you enough time under load to get a good conditioning effect. So just remember, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. Most of us like to do the big exercises that are fun for us, whether it be kettlebells or cables or Olympic lifting. But for a myriad of reasons, from injury to diet and lifestyle factors, we have a tendency to not realize that we could have our inner unit not working properly, and it needs to be reactivated and reintegrated, or we just use these big outer unit muscles so much that the faster, heavier movements don't create enough time under tension or static and dynamic postural loading to keep that inner unit conditioning such that the stabilizer system is adequately strong for the dynamic phasic system, which uses the big muscles to move things. So we can get a muscle imbalance between the stabilizer system and the prime mover system, which is kind of like having 500 horsepower in a Volkswagen Bug. It'll go like hell, but good luck trying to stop it or turn it. So the metaphor is, if we're going to build up the amount of horsepower we have moving our joints, we should also be wise enough to build up the amount of inner horsepower we have to strengthen and control the joints and keep their integration with the big muscles optimal, so we don't actually destroy ourselves doing the things that we love to do. So there's a little exercise as medicine for you. Lots more in scientific core conditioning. How to eat, move, and be healthy, the Golf Biomechanics Manual. And for those of you interested in the back, the sister course to scientific core conditioning is scientific back training, and it's full of practical testing and applications that you can use in rehab, personal training, or for your own health and well-being. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Paul Chek. I'll see you soon.